Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Nicole McAllister, and I'm sitting here with Roland Muzzatti, our District 4 RTO ERO President.
And
Roland, thank you so much for accepting to do this interview.
I'm very pleased to do it, and thank you and your committee for inviting me to be here with you today.
Well, let's get into it. The first question we have for you, Roland, could you talk a little bit about yourself, your credo, your passion, your principles?
You know, as I reflect on that question, I think of the three F's. For me, the first F is family. I've been very blessed with a loving family, both my family of origin and my current family. My wife and I will be celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary later on this month. We're blessed to have two sons and two lovely daughter-in-laws and 4 grandchildren, 2 boys, 2 girls, who are those 4 kids are the light and delight of our lives, you know. The second F for me is faith. I am an ordained Roman Catholic deacon, and for me that's an important part of who I am as a person.
Yes.
And I've been a lifelong parishioner at Christ the King parish here in Sudbury. So my faith traditions, my beliefs of faith are very important to me. And the last step is friendship. I think it's important to have connections with friends. And let's get in retirement. You know, on Saturday morning, I meet this group for coffee. Monday morning is this individual. Tuesday morning, I have breakfast with so-and-so. And actually, that's the reason why I've been involved in RTO, ERO, for the past 13 years. Because RTO is a great avenue for connections, for relationships, and for, real community building.
Well, you really summarized it very well, the 3F. I like that. And I might be using that in future references.
Well, there's actually a 4th F, fun. It's always good to have fun in those things too. So,
well, that's true. So family, I get family is very important, and faith and friendship. Those are all 3 different areas that helps you through life.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you now, let's get into the educator part. What made you become an educator, and what path led you to that profession?
I've always, right from the beginning, I've always loved learning and teaching. That was always a passion, and I was good at it, you know. I wasn't good at playing sports or a musical instrument or doing any of that stuff, but I was, I did love learning. And then 2, I was very fortunate throughout my, my years of going to school that I had good teachers. And in particular, when I went to high school, I had good French teachers, and they kind of became my role models and they inspired me. So when I did go to university, I majored in French and English so that I could become a French and English teacher.
Wow. So you speak French and you speak English.
Well,
and we'll find out very soon, because we'll be speaking and conversing in French.
I'll do the best I can,
well.
And I'm happy to answer in French.
I'm sure you will be very good at expressing yourself and getting your message across. Now, the main areas, I guess, because you got educated in both French and English, your main areas of your work during your career would have been what?
Well, first of all, as I look back on, I've got to say I'm blessed. I've had a very good career. I spent 26 years as a classroom teacher, where I taught English and French, mostly French, and I taught core French, and then I taught French immersion subjects like geography and history. I taught in French. And then after the 26 years, I became by the way, this was secondary, in the secondary panel. Actually, most of those 26 years were spent at St. Charles College here in Sudbury, in St. Benedict Catholic Secondary School. And then I became a vice principal at St. Charles College, and then a principal. And then when student success first came out, many boards did program principals. And I was a program principal of student success. And then my last 5 years, I was a superintendent of education with the Sudbury Catholic District School Board. And so that brought me to the 36 years. And at that point, I retired. And then once I retired, I had a 2-year contract with the board as BLDS lead, where I was mentoring and supporting newly appointed principals and vice principals. And so looking back on it, I've got nothing to complain about. My career was very good to me.
You did a lot, a gamut of different areas of working. It shows that you have a passion in education. And I bet we often talk about lifelong learning throughout the career. So you kept it up. If you became a principal, then a superintendent, I'm sure you kept up with learning for life.
Oh yeah, all the extra qualifications required for those positions I did while I was teaching full time and having young kids too. So in all of that, I was very grateful for my wife who, was very supportive, because as I was going to class and taking courses and writing papers, she was here looking after the kids.
Yes, well, it takes a team.
Yeah.
Both working together for a successful life. I always say, there's a successful person, there's always a companion or somebody there to support
Isn't that the
person.
Truth? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the rewards of your journey. And also I'm going to ask the struggles and the challenges that most would live, especially if you're passionate in a career.
Well, the reward obviously had to do with student success. That was the greatest reward. When you saw students do well, whether it was immediately, like while they were in your class, or after they graduated, or even later on in life, And another great success is I was very fortunate that I basically worked at 3 places: St. Charles, St. Benedict, and at the board office. In all 3 places, there was a great feeling of family among the staff. Like in all those 3 places, the staff did become like a second family. We did have each other's backs, and we were in each other's corner. And that really affected the morale of the workplace when you were able to do that.
Well, I could see that would be very rewarding, but because you have the personality for it. And, I can see that I would have loved to have you as a principal.
Well, be careful. I'm sure you'll find different opinions out there.
But it sounds really good. Now, what would be the struggles? Because you had some hard positions.
Yeah, well, the struggles were basically in the personal life, because it was really tough for me to do the personal life balance. So for example, particularly, regardless of the position, like there was a lot of work, extra hours in the evenings, So at the end of the day, I took time away from my kids for other people's kids. And, that was a struggle. There were times when it was not easy. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be. And any educator could vouch for that, because you do get involved. Sometimes you can be at home and still out thinking of decisions that were made during the day.
Right.
Because,
sure. Particular in senior leadership, right? You're always wondering, was that the right thing to do this afternoon at 2 p.m.,
Right. Yeah. And, that, again, that shows strong beliefs that you have. So, kudos to you. I'm going to ask you now, okay, time flies. You retired. So, how have you been involved in the community?
All right. So,
since retirement?
Okay, 3 areas basically. The first one is the church. Like I'm an active member of Christ the King. And part of it is, since I'm a deacon, one of the things I get to do now is I get to visit schools as Deacon Roland. So for example, this morning, I was at St. David's leading them or presiding at a Remembrance Day service. So it's great for me now to visit classrooms and in the whole idea of the school parish home partnership context. And also, like with the church, there are other meetings there that I'm involved in, liturgy, finance, so there's a lot of things there that keep me busy. Right? The second area, I'm greatly involved with L'Arche. I'm part of the Spiritual Life Committee of L'Arche Sudbury, and I'm also an associate member of L'Arche Sudbury. And once again, I can't say enough good things about L'Arche. Do you know there's only 8 L'Arche communities in all the province of Ontario? And Sudbury's blessed to have one. We don't realize the hidden treasure, the jewel that L'Arche is in Sudbury, and the impact that people with disabilities have on a community. And the third area where, of course, I'm really involved is RTO, or RO. I said earlier, I think it's 13 years I've been involved. And I got involved in the executive, right away, the executive board. I was secretary for 2 years, first vice president till last January, when all of a sudden I became president of District 4. So to me, it's important. Yes, family is very important, and that always has to be priority number one. But it's equally important to get involved in the community, in things outside the home and outside your immediate family.
I think RTO ERO is very lucky to have you as a president. So
once again, watch the polls you do there.
Thank you for accepting that role. But I'm going to ask you to elaborate a little bit on L'Arche Sudbury for folks that might not know what that entails.
Okay. Essentially, L'Arche Sudbury, the philosophy behind L'Arche is people with disabilities are like everybody else. So look at me. I want to live in a home. I want to live with my family. I want to live in a neighborhood. Well, L'Arche is the same philosophy. And what happens is people with disabilities live with people without disabilities, and they share a home together. They share a meal together. They share chores together. They sleep in that home. So it's a non-institutional way of living life when you have disability. And the whole idea is based on mutual relationships between people with disabilities and people without, and the mutuality of those relationships. Because you quickly discover once you get involved in L'Arche, it's not about caregiving. Okay? Yeah, sometimes you do have to provide care because some people's disabilities are quite extensive. But it's also about getting something out of receiving something out of the relationships that you enter into with people with disabilities. And that's where the real reward is. It's with the relationships. And that's why I've stuck around. I've been involved with L'Arche for 13 years. I was only supposed to do it for 1 year. When the end of the year came, I stayed.
Well, and as adults, as our generation, there's more older adults that would need support. So does that include, you mentioned disability, older adults as well? Yeah,
actually, I think about 40% of the current members of L'Arche Sudbury are senior citizens, so over 65 years of age.
Right.
Yeah, so we do have, actually, I think the oldest member is 90. So, and then we do have some that in their mid-60s and then in between.
Well, I can see that this is something that Sudbury can benefit from.
First, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that you are part of that and that you mentioned that, because some folks might not know about a L'Arche Sudbury. Moving on, I'm going to ask you the word of advice, or a word of advice to the younger generation.
Although having, getting a career, making money, having fun, all those things are important, but don't make them the center of your life. Worry about your heart, worry about your mind, worry about your soul. So if that's any advice, is worry about the stuff on the inside too. Don't ignore what's inside you, inside the core of your being. And don't let the inside suffer at the expense of all these other externals, because that's the easy temptation, right? Is to let those things govern us and control us and even enslave us.
And you're absolutely right. If we were to look back, we're now retired. I'm included in that as well. And if I look back, it's the time that I put in my career neglecting other things.
Yeah.
So
we all did that, didn't we?
Yeah, and we did. And nowadays it's not any different.
Yeah.
So it's good to remind young folks of, the reason of doing and well-being. And so I'm going to ask you, just in case you pretty much talked about it, but what would you do different if you were to, if you had the choice?
Right. One of the things I would do differently would be going back to those 26 years I spent in the classroom. See, the position I got as a young teacher, I was 21 years old when I walked into a secondary classroom for the first time. I replaced someone who had been fired because in those days, the expression was he couldn't control the class.
Uh-huh.
So that was always in the background of my mind that I had to be a very strict disciplinarian. So looking back on it, I think one thing I do differently is I wouldn't flex the rule book as much. I think I'd try to be less rigid and more flexible and more compassionate, I think. And so looking back, if there are any former students here are listening to this, and I apologize if my inflexibility, my rigidity caused you harm.
Well, it's mostly what happens to young teachers. So it's also a message to the younger teachers starting out, because to control a classroom, it comes with experience, right? Yeah. So, flex the muscles, that's one way of doing it. Yeah. But we quickly realize that's not the way. Right. What would you cherish the most?
The most that I cherish are, all those encounters with the students that have graduated, and I see they're successful in their careers. They have loving families. Some of the things I cherish, I've had at least 2 instances where former students have gone out of their way to call me. They lived long distance. One lives in Quebec, they went out of their way to call me and to thank me personally for the impact I had on their life. So you can well imagine, those are very touching and moving moments that I didn't expect because they hit me out of the blue, And and also I've gone to things like reunions and to connect with students at reunions of things they remember, the gratitude they express for how, in spite of myself, maybe I did help them. Maybe they did learn something from me. And the other, I think even more than that, what I cherish is now in my role as deacon, I've had a chance to officiate at weddings of former students. I baptized children of former students, and I've even had the privilege of baptizing grandchildren of former students. Well, that takes the cake. How many former teachers can say they've done
That's
that?
amazing.
So nothing beats the cherry on top. Nothing beats that cherry on top.
Oh, that's amazing. It is.
Yeah.
And that would be something to cherish for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had a complete turnaround from what you were saying when you started.
Yeah,
it's
true.
Yeah. So it's good with what comes with experience, and it's good for the younger generation to hear this.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
I think
Roland?
I've covered everything that I wanted to say. I think, Yeah, it's true. Just listening, as I'm reflecting myself, I never taught a special education class in my life. And yet here I am now involved with people with disability. You're right. My life in retirement has gone completely different direction. I'm doing things, totally different things that I never would have imagined myself doing.
Well, you're appreciated, and thank you again for
you're
accepting
welcome.
for the interview.
Thank you for the time. I was glad to be here.